Okay, perfect. So hi everyone, Eva Lungi. We also have Anna in the background who is an amazing multitasker, and who's going to jump in and out of the conversation with us as she sets up some flowers in the back. I think that's making for a colorful conversation as well. Today we're going to be talking to Leah, who is a Kenyan change maker and health advocate, who is the founder and executive director of the African Sickle Cell Organization, and who is looking to solve sickle cell in rural Africa. So we have been following along her work, very excited to see her journey and her resilience and determination in the work that she's doing. And we have also been quite interested in the last couple of years in personal branding and how can change makers such as Leah build better public profiles. How are they doing it? What can we learn from her and what can we learn from other people who are doing the same? And then how can we employ that for our own practices, our own causes, and all the things that we want to do to create change in the world. And so I think Leah is currently just occupied, and I think Anne has known Leah for quite a bit, and they've met before. So I don't know, Anne, if you can let us know how you guys met and like how we've managed to bring Leah into the Brand the Change community and conversation.
Hello, I am back. I apologize for that interruption.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Anne was just going to let us know how you guys met and how we've managed to kind of grab you for the Brand the Change community and the conversation we want to have today.
Great, great. Yes, we met, and I think, was it the third year of the social innovation management? And Anne facilitated a course on branding, and I was like, wow, this is such an interesting concept. I need to really know how to do it. And yeah, I can share more in our session, but for me, we've been friends with Anne because I was really keen on branding, and I knew this board is something very significant for the kind of work that I want to do. And we've been maintaining very close relationships with Anne and following her work, and she has been following my work, and I'm happy that this is finally happening. And hopefully after this, we can do even more sessions or more practical workshops in case that is needed. So looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah,
And thank
amazing.
you for the invite, Anne.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when Drew, maybe it's good to highlight, like, I think Mia serves as an amazing example for a lot of things that, or she has built her profile in a way that I think can be quite inspirational because it speaks to a lot of things that people are struggling with within the brand change community. I think what I admire about how Leah does it is that she's such a strong advocate for a cause. Everything that I see about her is very to the point of obviously the topic of sickle cell, which she can talk about more, but she's very on topic, but yet like gives me big insight into like all the different, like, I guess she paints the picture of the problem, she paints pictures of solutions. She talks about this big topic in a very personal way. And it's very vulnerable also sometimes with, like, the journey not being easy. And I think, yeah, just following her is a great lesson in like how we can leverage our reputations and our profiles to make stuff happen.
Yeah, amazing. So Leah, I've done a bit of an introduction of what it is you're currently doing, but I want to pass the mic to you and tell us a little bit about what it is you do, what you're currently working on, and yeah, the foundation, as well as how you carry out advocacy through your personal public profile as well.
Thank you, Wanjiru, and thank you, Anne. If in any point of the discussion my internet kind of becomes shaky, just let me know. But other than that, my name is Leah Kilenga Bay, and I'm the founder and I'm executive director of Africa Sickle Cell Organization. Africa Sickle Cell Organization is organization that seeks to provide equitable sickle cell care in rural resource-poor communities in sub-Saharan Africa. Historically, sickle cell has been neglected. Actually, the Lancet defines sickle cell as the most neglected global health issue today. And it's unfortunate because statistically, up to 90% of children born with sickle cell in sub-Saharan Africa do not make it to their 5th birthday, which is a gross, it's a disaster that is not defined as a disaster. Anyway, I started my work, I think 10 plus years ago, where I was fed up of the system because I had grown up with sickle cell, with a family that is steeped into sickle cell, where 3 of the children in our home had sickle cell, myself and my 2 older sisters. I thought that the system would have changed by the time that I had reached 20, and it did not. My elder sister unfortunately succumbed at the age of 4. And my older sister got an opportunity to travel to the US, so she did not have to contend with the challenges of a broken health system. And I now, on the other hand, my sickle cell became more severe because my parents were empowered. They were able to seek and access care very, very intentionally. I did not have as many complications growing up. However, when I reached a point where I was no longer under my parents' care, that is, and health insurance, then it became visible the problems that the system poses for people like myself. So at that time, I remember a situation where I reached, or I arrived in a hospital in deep crisis. One of the biggest problems of sickle cell, I think I should have defined what sickle cell is. The people before, yes. So sickle cell is a genetic blood disorder that affects the round normal red blood cells into sickle-shaped red cells. So what this causes is there's very little oxygen carrying capacity in those cells. And because they're shaped in sickle forms, they are very rigid and they're very hard, and they block the small capillaries, ensuring that very little oxygen, very little nutrients, very little like blood is accessed to these major organs. One of the biggest problems for sickle cell, or biggest, most severe symptom is pain, acute chronic pain. And a lot of the people living with sickle cell have very low immunity levels. They have severe anemia and multiple organ complications. Because it is blood disease, it affects all organs. So care is needed across, comprehensively across the body. But that is not available in the settings that we are in. So at this point, I was in very, very severe pain. I went to a hospital, a private hospital, where I thought that these people might have the kind of care that I need. However, upon reaching, the doctor was asking me, so Leah, what do you normally do when you're in a crisis like this? And for me, it was a weird question, because I did not expect a doctor to ask me how they should do their job. So at that point, I think my frustrations had reached to a point where I could no longer continue going to the hospital and receiving this kind of feedback. And I realized that the doctors, donors, or the people who've been solving sickle cell may not have been solving it properly because the situation was still persistent. So that's when I started my journey. But the organization itself was founded in 2018 because I had to operate in a legal manner and create a sustainable program. So what we do is create sub-national sickle cell programs that provide early and continuous access to sickle cell care, inpatient and outpatient. We also address the social determinants of sickle cell, of health of people living with sickle cell, because you can give medicines, you can give doctors, you can allow people to attend clinics, but if they are in very destitute conditions and come from very low resource homes, they're not able to access food, water, or essential social services that will allow them to thrive with this medicine. And thirdly, we advocate very heavily with subnational governments, national governments, regional and global governments to prioritize sickle cell in policy and budgets, so that they can be able to plan and create health systems and infrastructure that responds to sickle cell in sub-Saharan Africa.
Yeah. So among some of the challenges you're mentioning, I had a bit of like an awareness problem. I think even from like the doctor, like asking you, oh, how do you deal with this crisis? And I think even when you were talking about growing up with sickle cell in your home, there was kind of the empowerment that your parents had and the awareness of the condition and how people kind of deal with it, how they get access to the resources and the medical care. So in your journey, have you found that awareness is also something that you're constantly dealing with? And then like, what are some of the audiences that you need to approach, and then how are you going about it?
So a lot of people ask me exactly, what is your work? Aside from what the organization does, what is my work? Aside from resource mobilizing, which is, I think, 80% of my role, I think my other role is awareness creation. Because awareness creation happens in multiple ways at multiple levels. Sickle cell is largely stigmatized across sub-Saharan Africa, within homes, within communities that are affected with sickle cell, within the healthcare system, within governments, and within decision-making tables. And a lot of the stigma, because I've experienced stigma and shunning and discrimination for such a long time, I have realized that people stigmatize because they are misinformed, ill-informed, and uninformed. So awareness creation allows you to create this and to help people be informed what sickle cell is. So systematically, because our family and is a very big family, but apparently we were at least the main house that was affected across our relatives, we had to now create awareness across our family, our extended family, because we needed blood donors. We needed people to come and visit us in the hospitals. We needed people who can contribute to some of the medical costs that we incurred. And without telling people what this condition is and without bringing them closer to this condition, then they would ascribe this to witchcraft, to ancestral curses, or just, you know, something is happening in that household and we don't know what it is. And they shun you and discriminate you and shame you. So my parents and my mother told me that she sometimes did not bring us to our village or to our ancestral home for holidays because they would want us to go through cultural cleansing, spiritual cleansing, prayers, etc. And slowly by slowly, they were educated that this is a condition that can be managed clinically and with specific protocols if made available. So now, once that level was done, I had to now, the way I started my work, it's good that you brought this up. I was frustrated because I realized that people didn't know what sickle cell was. And what is the best way to make this disease known? Like, because I go to the hospital, I see other patients like myself, how come doctors don't know this disease exists? So what I did, I woke up one day, I was like, I'm going to take 10,003 photos of people living with sickle cell across Kenya, so that at least I can have like a number that justifies attention. And that's what I did. I took a photographer and a videographer and went across Kenya and started taking photos and telling stories of people living with sickle cell. Homes where people and children had debilitating symptoms and debilitating complications because of the lack of management. I will visit a home where 3 of the children are paralyzed because they have had no care for so long that they have succumbed to strokes and majority of them cannot walk, or children who are stunted in terms of, you are told someone is 10 but they look 4, not because they are not eating, but because their condition is very severe, their anemia is very severe, and they're not getting the care that they deserve. Or in houses where the child is completely abandoned, or the child is not taken to school because because they've had other children with sickle cell who have died, then why should they invest in this or on this child to speak? So those stories were very hard, and I got to 400. And with this 400, I went back to Nairobi because I could not continue without having a solution for these people, because it is very exploitative and extractive to continue telling stories of a situation you do not have a solution for. So I went back, looked around, asked around, and I was told that the person who was in charge of this disease or solving this condition is in the Ministry of Health, Department of Non-Communicable Diseases. I went to meet this lovely gentleman who welcomed me, told him about the project and told him about sickle cell. And he was like, you have done a very good job, Leah. These are my contacts. I will be in touch. Keep up the good work. 3 months later, I was frustrated. My heart is heavy. This man is not doing anything. He's not responsive. I traveled to his office. He doesn't want to, no, he's not there because non-communicable disease range from cancers, hypertension, diabetes, asthma, epilepsy, all the number of diseases. So he's extremely busy, understandably busy. But his busyness made me uncomfortable, and his lack of time to address this issue made me uncomfortable. So I was like, let me send him a photo a day. So I sent him a photo a day of the stories that I had. And 7 days later, he was like, Leah, I hear you, please come. I'm in Kenya. You've made a point. So he was very resourceful. He brought together the World Bank, World Health Organization, and different partners who were working on sickle cell then, and we raised an initial $20,000 for the national guidelines for the management and control of sickle cell disease in Kenya. These guidelines are a policy document that says this is how you treat sickle cell patients across different governments and non-government facilities in the country, which was a very big step. But he was also very cognizant that, Leah, in my space, in the spaces that I work in, people do not understand, are not aware about this problem. So every conference and every convening that I have that is of substance, you need to come, you need to have your photos, and you need to speak about sickle cell. And that's how I started. So for him, he understood that for prioritization to happen, he also needed to make the people on his level aware that this disease exists. So that was the other level of awareness that I had to create. So for me, my work is continuous awareness of this problem, continuous awareness of the work that we do, continuous awareness that sickle cell is no longer a death sentence. So they should look at solving the problem from birth to up until we are adults and even aging adults, as well as continuous awareness of the demand in special communities, low resource communities, communities that are facing this 90% death sentence for all the children that they have being born with sickle cell. So yes, Wanjiru, the short answer is creating awareness is, I think, is for you to do anything, that's the basic thing that you have to do. People have to know what you're doing. People have to know and to be invited into what you're doing before they can support, or before you can convert them to do anything else to support you or to join you.
Yeah. So I think that really does answer the question I had. And then coming back to how you started the foundation in 2018, like you mentioned, one of the things we always see in the community, and like one of the programs I ran with one of our colleagues, Maya, which is a personal brand challenge for Changemakers, is we find a lot of Changemakers coming in and saying they're struggling between making the decision to build a personal brand, like in your case, where especially the founder is so passionately and personally tied to the cause that they're trying to create change in, or building an organizational brand. So you have both, and you created the foundation later in 2018. So what was that process like for you? In like, this is Leah, and I go to the stage and I talk as Leah, and this is my personal public profile and personal brand, and then where does the foundation come in? And have you how was the journey making the choice between organizational brand and personal brand for you?
Oh wow, Angelo. I think that's my constant tussle now. Since the organization was founded in 2018, people knew Leah and people associated Leah with sickle cell, and so we are kind of synonymous. And for me, I think about the organizations that are doing very well, that have I won't say ghost founders, but founders you will not know about, and they are successful. And the organizations that are equally successful because of the visibility and the publicity and the profile of the founder, like Elon Musk or Steve Jobs. And I think during Bob Collymore time, you would know, like Bob Collymore was kind of had a high profile and was very visible. So I think it's the choice of the founder and how that relationship either elevates or detracts from the overall mission. So in my case, because sickle cell is I'm very intertwined in sickle cell, that I am living with the condition and I am running an organization solving for the problems that I am living with for others, I think I cannot necessarily put Leah behind or put ASCO behind. Whenever I speak about sickle cell, I speak about initially my personal experience. I speak about the journey of where I am, the journey of solving the problem, and how I came about to identify the solutions. Because I have my own personal experiences myself and in the community that we solve for. So in this regard, there's a sense of credibility that you have, that you actually understand how to solve the problem. So now when you start speaking about Africa Sickle Cell Organization, then people lean in, because a lot of people tell me that I thought you're just an advocate. I'm like, it is impossible for me to advocate and to speak the way I speak without having a background or having a foundation of work that I am actively doing in communities that informs my advocacy. Because advocacy and awareness creation and health system strengthening, you have to do the work so that you can get the experience on what to speak about and what to resource for and what to advocate for. So for me, it's my personal choice. Like now I am actively putting myself out there on social media. on all the conversations that I have, the conferences that I go to, the spaces that I speak, the events that I am invited to, not because I want to elevate my profile, but I want to elevate the profile of the problem.
Yeah.
So for me, that is the underlying goal. Okay. Yeah. And it is a balance. It is a balance. Because if I continue to promote myself and people respond to me, how am I channeling those resources and those on that visibility and that profile to the organization, which now is able to spread the help that we need for all these other people? So I think I am the driver and the bridge between the problem and the people that I am addressing with the organization and the communities that we are supporting.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've
I like
answered
that
your
you,
question.
yeah, you have. And I like that you've also mentioned social media, which is just like a whole different beast. And I think
Yeah.
we find that in the social development space, and especially with change makers and people working for impact-driven organizations, a lot more people are getting the ick with social media. And we know like the platforms also have some questionable practices, like you'll hear that there are data privacy issues, there are ethical issues, like Meta is not always doing, the
No.
best, and you hear all these stories coming up. So what's your take on using social media to create change? How are you doing it? What platforms are you using, if any? And how have you found maybe success using social media for raising awareness, and also your journey with the foundation?
So that's a very good question. And for me, social media is a tool that either elevates and enables, or the opposite. So at the different levels and stage of development of my work, I use different social media platforms. I initially, when I was doing the 10,003 Warrior Project, the photography narrative and the photography project, I used Facebook. I use Facebook to reach the communities that are affected, the people who are living with sickle cell that I wanted to support and wanted to partner with in this project, and create a group that they can be able to have some form of education and some form of support virtually initially. And we were very successful. We amassed up around 10,000 followers in the very early years of Facebook. So in time, we transferred and we evolved into Instagram, because now we have the photos, we have the stories, and Instagram was a better platform in terms of the kind of media that we were using and the kind of message that we wanted to pass. So this is now where the awareness creation was coming in. This is now sharing the stories of the experiences of people living with sickle cell from multiple areas, the caregivers as well, the care system around the patient, so that people can understand the disease from multiple angles. So at this time, at least I feel like I was able to attract a larger pool of audience that is internationally, because this is a very novel, and the photos were very striking, that people were very interested about the work that we do and the work that we did. And because we were doing this with the ministry and also doing it physically, the ministry appointed me as a sickle cell champion, because of self-managing myself and taking on this challenge and doing the work that I do without pay, without any kind of accolades. So they actually appointed me as one of the sickle cell champions. So after Instagram, we now evolved to Twitter. So for Twitter, this is when we wanted, mostly in the media, the KTNs, the BBCs, the Citizens. So from social media to now public in Kenya. Now, having a bigger platform, speaking about sickle cell, celebrating World Sickle Cell Day, in Kencom, donating blood and asking people to come and donate blood. So we had a wider platform to be able to create awareness, to educate, and to attract people to come and support. And the kind of support that we needed is for people to know this exists, to reduce the stigma around sickle cell, as well as to increase support from the public towards sickle cell. So now we are on LinkedIn. So 2018, when I started my organization with no resources, I needed a place where I could target people who have resources. So I am now on LinkedIn because that's where we have the foundations. That's where we have the donors. That's where we have the people who can actually come in and support in building resilient health systems, capacity building, providing essential medicines, all that big money that is needed to solve sickle cell. That's where they are. And for me, that's where I'm at now, at my level of evolution. But now coupled with documentaries that we do with international media, and also now my personal page, where now I, as the face of the organization and as a person living with sickle cell, how does that relate? How is living with sickle cell and running an organization that is solving sickle cell? So those are the stories that are interesting, because also garners the kind of support from people who want to come and work with ASCO. So for me, social media, you have to understand what social media is and how each social media site and platform helps you achieve your social goal. And either if it's creating awareness or it's social change, at what level and who are you targeting, and using the platform that will best target that audience that you want to help you achieve your mission.
Yeah, I think at Brand Exchange and with like our method and toolkit, we would really approve of this social media strategy, because we try to think of, oh, what platform are you using and why are you using it, as opposed to kind of finding this everything everywhere all at once, where you just do everything everywhere because you want to reach people. But then it sounds like you have like a really good strategy. Oh, this is what we're going to use LinkedIn for. This is what we're using Instagram for. I think that's also something.
And it's also because Changemakers, you start small, and initially organization is very small, very low resourced, and you have very little time on your hands, or little money, or a small team. So you cannot spend your time on all social medias, just, playing, like, I don't want to speak Swahili.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. We'll find a translation for it.
Yeah, just tic-tac-toe, and it doesn't give you an ROI that is most valuable and most meaningful for you. And I think people have FOMO, and usually judge themselves based on how other people judge them, or based on what other people are doing. So you really need to be very tunnel focused. Like I had to be very, very tunnel focused. As much as people are telling me, be on Instagram, or be on TikTok, I knew that does not serve our level of evolution, our mission at this point. And therefore, I really need to focus and dig deep to this platform. And now we are in a level where now we are measuring our metrics. I know we have been very silent on social media now. We actually have a partner who is supporting us for the next 1 year for a visibility grant. He's given us a visibility grant. That's all you need to do, and that's all they want us to do, which will now allow us to elevate our profile, our stories, and be on the kind of platforms that we need to be on, so that we can be able to also grow the organization.
Yeah. I want to take you back a bit. I'm seeing a really good question in the chat that Anne is asking. So she's asking, she's interested to know why you became an advocate. So many of us get sick or have loved ones who've gotten sick. but not all of us decide to make it our life's mission to address it. So yeah, what was the inspiration like for you from like diagnosis and like dealing with it and your sisters, and then deciding, hey, I'm going to do something about this and I'm going to put myself out in the world as a change maker who can create solutions to this problem that I'm facing?
Wow, that's a very interesting question. The plan was, truth be told, the plan was after university, I have a degree in international business. And for me, after that was either go into banking or management consulting. That was the plan, or marketing, things that are normal, quote unquote. But when I did the traveling around Kenya and taking the photos and hearing the stories, I was devastated in very many ways, and I could not imagine not doing anything about this problem. I could not imagine thinking that someone else will come and solve this problem for me or for everyone else. And I really knew I was ill-equipped to solve this problem. I knew I did not have the background, nor do I have the expertise to solve this problem. And I had to do something. And the small somethings that I did every day is what brought me here. So every day I'm still deciding to be an advocate. I did not wake up one day and say, oh, I will do advocacy, because there's no, like, maybe Anne can tell me, there's no like template of how to do this work. Unless you have a friend who was in the early days of HIV and has gone through this, but it's a whole also different game for HIV and sickle cell. But there was no template. So I had to figure out every step of every day for me to reach this point. So it is a daily choice. And today I'm still choosing to be an advocate. Sometimes it gets so hard. No, really, let me let me be frank. Sometimes it got so hard that I wanted to quit and do something, or go and apply for a job in one of these INGOs, because I think I have the experience. But then I think, then what? Who else would be able to carry on this? Who else will be able to think systematically and have the kind of background you have and the life experience and the experience in those communities to be able to carry out the vision that you had and solve this sickle cell in a way that, is not fragmented? Because the solutions that are currently existing or historically existed are for medicines or for one angle, but you're not looking at the whole person holistically. And for you to understand what a whole person with sickle cell needs, you have to have stepped in those shoes for you to know. So I think one of the biggest advantages I have is that, knowing that. But of course, I know there's someone who can also do this work. It's not that I am special, but I choose because I enjoy it, one, as much as it's very difficult. And two, I think it makes me a better person. So being an advocate, being in service of others makes me a better person. And for me, that is the biggest reward for doing this work. And that's why I continue doing this work. And I choose to be an advocate every day. Yes, Anne, I'm seeing. And
Yeah, there's a question or a comment.
Well, I think what you're saying, Leah, is really, I mean, it's giving me a bit of goosebumps in a way, because I think what people often overlook is that you have kind of a double burden. So you have the burden of living with the illness, and then you have the burden of having to solve all the systemic, really deeply rooted issues around this illness. And that's a lot to take on. And I think in society, we see that people kind of take it for granted that the people who deal with issues are the ones that have to solve them. Like you have to be, a survivor of rape in order to start the foundation to combat it. Like, and so like there's really a double burden on the people who have to live through these things. And then the other thing is that there's an opportunity cost. You could be, a very successful management consultant. Your life would potentially be financially much more secure, but you take all these, you make these personal sacrifices in order to serve others. And I think that's obviously super, that's incredible. I think we don't respect that enough as a society. And it sounds to me like, and maybe we can touch upon that just as a topic, but like, what are the kind of resources that a person like you ideally would need for this? Like, what kind of system would you need around you in order to succeed better at your work? Because I would argue that like your insights from a patient perspective are great, but if you had a good, like, let's say a good user researcher next to you, or a really good service designer next to you, that would be funded somehow, then some of that burden could, be taken from you. Or if you had, a marketing director next to you. So yeah, if when it'd be interesting to hear like from Leah, like what kind of support would she need to truly make a dent?
Yes, and you bring a very sensitive topic to the surface that people don't usually think about, is the opportunity cost and the levels of sacrifice that you have to take for you to perpetually continue doing this work. People ask me, will I recommend anyone to do this? It is I will not, because it's long term, and it's it's a destiny, it's a destination. I think the person who put it very well was Paul Farmer. When he was our professor before he passed, he told me the importance of sticking to a problem for the long term and not shifting and moving careers is what a lot of people forget that is needed to solve very hard challenges and problems. And it's a form of destiny and destination, because destiny comes from destination that you have to commit to taking. But as you commit to taking, you have to abandon all these roads that will take you different, like maybe raising a family, or having children early, or maybe having a more financially secure career. And that's the reality. And I don't want to tell people this is a bed of roses. It is not. It is a refining journey that really unpacks and holds the mirror every day for you to see yourself, truly see yourself. But to your question, Anne, so now we are at a level where now I am hiring. I have 2 and 1 part-time, but now we are hiring those expertise that we need to now take the organization to another level and allow me to focus on awareness creation and resource mobilizing. So there are multiple things that we need as an organization. That is the human resources, and also the resources to be able to actually do the work. So a lot of the funds that we raise, we raise very little program-based funds, unless it's very unique program. That's when we accept funds, but we like to raise unrestricted multi-year long-term funds that helps us at least do the work long term, innovate, make mistakes, learn, and grow. Now we have that is sustainably going to allow us to have the research and the monitoring and evaluation that is needed to show that our work is working and people can support us to continue working. So it's a beautiful thing for us. For me personally, another beautiful thing about African Sickle Cell Organization is, maybe might be very surprising to you, sickle cell is largely excluded in majority health insurance across the world. Sadly. In Kenya, yes, but they have very serious exclusions, waiting periods. They don't pay properly or reimburse properly. So it's a very big complication. And for me, I have lived, I think, close to 10 years now without any substantial, expensive private health insurance. We have a health financing program in the organization that affords insurance for the patients we support and also makes it sustainable for the health system to provide this care. But now, because the organization can afford to hire, can afford to pay health insurance, means that I can now eventually get health insurance. That's a huge achievement. But one of the biggest sacrifices I think I have had to make, not the biggest, is convincing my parents and my family, because they asked me all the investments they have made in good schools, I have a master's, FYI, and it's like, yo. So it is I think 2 years now that I've been earning a salary from Africa Sickle Cell Organization to kind of support myself and to tell my parents, actually, this thing is working. And they see all the good work that we are doing. They see all the attention that we're getting and all the support that we're getting and all the invitations that we get from governments to support their sickle cell challenges. So they see the growth that I have, although they had to wait very many years for their investment in me to pay off. So for me, I think I did not want to be a disappointment to my parents, and at least now I am not. I feel. And they have been, oh my God, they have been so, like, my health and my success is largely based on having them as parents. The way they raised me and my sisters, the schools they took me to, the research they did on the type of diet that I need, the kind of environment that we need, allowed me to also have that kind of mindset to create the specific lifestyles that will enable me to thrive. And also now the patients that they have for me, they're angels. And yeah, there's so much that I have that other people don't have. And I am very grateful, and I'm very grateful, and I'm very privileged, and I know that. So I have to do, I have to put in the work to be able to try and solve this problem, because I think I know what good looks like, and I know what thriving looks like, and I want other people to have an opportunity to experience that.
Yeah. You can change the world, but your parents will still have parental expectations. They're like, oh, when are you going to get this done? What happened to that master's? I think we can all relate. I think Anne and I have had very interesting conversations about countering your father on LinkedIn, where, comments and asks questions. And I'm like, not on LinkedIn, not on my LinkedIn, Dad. I have to call him and ask him why he's commenting on some posts and on my LinkedIn account, but it's very interesting. I think I really like the kind of like campaign, if I can call it that, of like the 400 photos and like having them on Instagram, sending it to the guy at the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Health, and like how that has kind of converted over time into like a long-term boost for awareness and like really driving home the gravity of the situation and the conversations you want to have. Um, is there any other kind of communication campaign or experience or like activity you've taken on that you found to be super successful?
Yes. I don't know if it's communication per se. I think when we started 10,003 Warrior Project, Eunice Ruth is here. Ruth was there when we did the 10,003 Warrior Project. We did it with 0 funds. And I think there was an organization, I don't know what the one called. They came to Power 254. They were looking for social innovators. And they said, come to our event. We are talking about crowdfunding, and we have a crowdfunding platform that we are launching. And however much money you raise in that platform, we match it. I was like, wow, okay. So that's how I think we started. And we got that initial 120,000 at that time we raised. Yeah, and that was successful. The other successful communication, I think I've been very fortunate to have a lot of media profile. The BBC did a documentary, and there's another big documentary that is going to launch in a few months that will also support the profile of the organization. And I think because a lot of sickle cell or organizations working with sickle cell or people living with sickle cell, they're very, compared to other conditions, it is very unlikely that you see a story about sickle cell that is done well and that is towards a specific objective, like resource mobilizing or raising funds. So I think that's what we want to actively do, because sickle cell is very sensitive. How do I tell these stories in a sensitive way? And how do I portray people's lives in a sensitive way that does not put off the audience? You know, those stories that are, yeah, you know, you're like, donate, but you're like, what? This one, you've twisted my arm because that is a graphic story. Yeah, so having that balance is now what we are trying to get into with our communications and feasibility project and grant on how are we going to now use stories to highlight the different layers of sickle cell, from the caregiver perspective, from the male perspective, from a person who has HIV, but has a child with sickle cell, but also has 5 other children who are in poverty. Like, those different stories, I think, are important. And I don't think the media does a good job in highlighting those nuances. And successfully, yeah, I think we've had success with communication. June 19th is World Sickle Cell Day, Wanjiru. We are trying, we'll do a fun thing. And I hope it is successful. I hope it is successful, but it will be communications, because we are channeling a lot of our visibility through social media and communications. But yeah, one thing I have to mention, Wanjiru, is well, let me not say I don't, but for local media to cover a sickle cell story by African Sickle Cell Organization, you have to really approach me with a proper proposal. Like I don't do local media because of just the way they do the stories, and how exploitative they are and non-inclusive they are, and how skewed they are towards their objective instead of the overall mission of sickle cell. So yeah,
I'm seeing a question in the chat from
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I think
No,
yes.
in a way, I think she sort of touched on it as I was sending it, because I was wondering about that. And I suppose it's something that you might have encountered because, you know, to Anne's point, in that you are carrying the double burden of living with the disease yourself, but also of advocating for others who have the same struggle. And so the way or the lens through which you sort of build that narrative, it's amazing to me that you are very intentional and selective about how you want that to be portrayed so that it doesn't come across as being exploitative or misappropriated. Because I think for a lot of activists, especially those who are carrying the double burden, people can be very mean, like mean-spirited, especially when it comes to public narratives, to, funding and funding disbursements and things like that. People, yeah. So I was wondering about that, if you've ever had any kind of backlash or resistance, just somebody with a different kind of spirit who doesn't want to see the value of the work and the importance of the work, but thinks it's just another fundraising vehicle for getting into people's pockets and, yeah. But I think you were sort of starting to answer that.
Yes. Two answers to that question is, fortunately or unfortunately, I have not yet started asking people to donate. Yeah. in a public forum, because I had not yet figured out how to do that in a way that doesn't look like I am always asking, and then people just switch off. And also purposefully and intentionally supporting this request for donation with stories that are meaningful, of successes and also of the glaring needs that we have in the community. Like I had to figure out that before now I can start asking, which we have reached a point where I have. And one of the things that we are launching is our newsletter. We've never had a newsletter in the past 5 years that 6 years that we have been as an organization. So now what I am very critically and in tune with what social media needs and what we need as an organization. And for me, I think a newsletter that is impactful and is powerful is able to convert and able to carry those stories with that kind of dignity that we desire, that can be able to link with our LinkedIn and with our social medias on Twitter, so that it doesn't seem exploitative, extractive, or, like, I know that feeling. And backlash, I think the only backlash I can remember getting was not out of asking people, but it was when we were displaying the photos on Instagram. I think there was one comment that came that said the photos are very sad. They look very sad. And I didn't know how to answer that. And Yeah, so for me, I also had to take down the photos because of that comment, not because I don't know, I wanted to highlight those stories and those faces in a way that can be of value. And sometimes Instagram is very fleeting. People want, bold, I mean Hawaii, I mean where, lovely photos of beautiful people. But now when you see a monochrome photo with someone who has sickle cell, and then the story is just, it's, yeah, it became a challenge. So what we have done is now we exhibit those photos in museums. The last exhibit was in Liverpool Museum, where I think people had more value and had more appreciation of the art and of the social issue that the art is depicting. So yeah, so we are finding our way. Using people's images and stories is a fine line that you really need to constantly keep yourself in check. Asking yourself, would I want to be portrayed like that? Or would I want my children to be portrayed like that? Yeah.
Yeah, and you have a question.
Yeah, well, I guess it's not so much a question, it's just more of a thinking out loud, because when I hear your story, Leah, like I just want someone like Mackenzie Scott to give you like, $500,000 of unrestricted funding, so that you can do this work without needing, like just exactly in the way that you described it, like being able to experiment and fail, being able to build a team, knowing that you can breathe for a couple of years. And we've had a lot of discussion, my husband and I, when you and I, about like, the constraints around certain philanthropy, and also in the context of the uncharitable documentary, like there's so much on the back foot, when you constantly have to prove like you spent this dollar to create this change and all of that. And it reminds me, like, through Patreon, I support artists. So like, I give an artist $15 a month, and I think the return is send me like, I don't know, a drawing or something a month. But I would just like, sometimes wonder, like, would a certain system for change makers also work where, because obviously I'm not a Mackenzie Scott who can, I wish I was, maybe send Leah $500,000. But like for you to have like a sort of, passive recurring base of donors,
Yes.
I think would be a amazing thing for you. And you decide whatever that means. And the other thing, I guess, is that I feel like this, to all the sacrifices that you're making personally, like I often feel like, what would it mean for people like you to actually have like a bigger income? Because we always talk about like, oh, what would a funder do with the money? Like, would they hire people, this, that? And I always feel like, well, let them first pay themselves. Let them pay themselves so that they can breathe and actually continue the battle, Because like I know people who are doing amazing things who don't have proper health care, right? Like, how can you keep making the sacrifice? So anyway, thinking out loud. I know that when you remember Boston from Equalize Health, he's working with an organization called Momentum, and they're trying to set up this app that helps like subscription based donations to NGOs. But I almost feel like we need that kind of Patreon and Momentum thing for people creating change as well.
Yeah,
Like
definitely.
individuals.
Yeah, from what you're saying, and even what Leah was saying about the funding, unrestricted funding, just brings me back to the uncharitable conversation of I see where the hesitation to ask for donations comes from. And I think even from Leah also mentioning that you're quite strict with publicity in Kenya. And I think in that conversation I was sharing that charity in Kenya works a bit differently. There's like a lot of hesitation. There's a culture of, I guess, doubt that has been built in the community that you would still need to address and combat along the way. And I think that's the frustration where you find the people trying to create change, the people trying to do something good for the society and for community, and people who are struggling with different challenges keep like meeting hurdle after hurdle after hurdle, and then that kind of just wears you down, and you want to think, how can we get rid of this challenge? How can we create kind of like that access to funding or donations? And how can you also have that freedom to request for donations and have them come in freely without those like burdens or expectations that the donors have, and they're like, yeah, this is where the money you give me went. And I think that's also part of like the brand awareness of like letting people know, or having conversations such as this where I'm learning so much from what you're sharing. And I think if we can have these conversations more public, have them more frequently, then maybe people have a better understanding of, hey, this is what Leah is working towards, and this is what my donation of time or resources or money, this is how it helps move the solution along and helps get it into the hands of the people who need it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Anne is just it just has so many gems, and one of the thing about donations is that aside from all the things that I've spoken about, we're also looking for a platform that works globally for us, and we were not able to find that sort of platform aside from PayPal, which has very expensive fees, and other like not so well structured platforms. So now we have multiple donors who now host some donation campaigns in their regions for ASCO, which is very helpful. We have our Australian donors who now collect resources from their Australian and New Zealand partners and channel it to that. And now we are going to hopefully get into global giving that now will allow us to open that up for UK, US, because we have been on a long journey of looking for a fiscal sponsor, and that has not been fruitful for us. So we are trying multiple things for multiple regions, so that when we start asking for donations, it's something that is not complication, something that is recurring, something that is seamless and easy for people who actually want to donate long term to be able to do this. And I think most of the organizations that are highly successful have a huge donor base. And now the question for Africa Sickle Cell Organization is, how do we link our communication campaigns, our branding, and now our donation, and have that to be recurring and not laborious for the person who's listening to the message or the person creating the message, that is ASCO. So partnering with organizations who are trusted is also one of the things that builds credibility to donors, and also having the engine in the back end to deliver these reports, to tell them this is where your dollars went and these are the persons you have supported. Please support some more for next time. I think that's also the engine that is required to have that loop of trust between donors and organizations. And for sickle cell, I think there's a huge opportunity, and maybe we can discuss it separately with Anne, of creating donor bases in different countries, because you can have Nigerians in Kenya, or Kenyans in Nigeria, or Kenyans in the US, like these small pockets of communities people create in their different locales, but they look for organizations doing impactful underserved work, but they never get these organizations, or the organizations are not visible enough for us. Having a strategy that targets these communities and allowing them to fuel their donations towards the organization, I think is one of those opportunities that we are yet to take advantage of and to leverage, not to take advantage of, but to seek out. So
Yeah.
the opportunities are limitless. It is just for us to get our house in order and start resource mobilizing.
Oh, Leah, thank you so much. It's been so good learning everything from you and everything about your work, the Africa Sickle Cell Organization, how you're doing it, some of the challenges you're facing. I think this has been such an insightful conversation. And I guess my final question, and then open it to Anne and Lungi and Ruth in case they have follow-up questions for you. How can we who are on this call and the people who are going to be watching the recording later, so how can we support you? How can we support the work that you're doing? Yeah, so me as Wanjiru in Nairobi, how can I support the Africa Sickle Cell Organization and what you're doing?
Of course, sharing this conversation and telling and creating awareness of sickle cell. Once you know about sickle cell, I'm sure you'll search us out and you'll find us on social media. So those are the first steps. The second steps, I think I will go through brand the change and request that when we eventually launch our newsletter, which is in the month of July, that we can be able to channel or link you to a place that you can support either one-off or continuously to the organization. And one other thing is if you're a change maker, I know maybe I have painted a double-edged sword about the change journey. Please, like, I think the world revolves around change makers and people who wish to do good. Never give up and take it a day at a time. You cannot solve the entire problem today or tomorrow, but you can solve bits and pieces of it and grow towards being better so that you can solve the entire problem. One other thing that I failed to mention is that it is very important to have a community around you, a community of other people who are actually also solving the same problem with you. Because for a person like me, my health comes first. And when I'm down, and that's it. But if you have a team, if you have a group of like-minded folks, and I'm happy that Ruth is here, who are also solving the same problem in their own space, in their own ways, I think we are able to carve out the problem faster than just being yourself. So have a heart of generosity and a mind of abundance, because sometimes the resources are so limited. We're like, oh my God, I don't want to tell anyone this idea, or I don't want to tell anyone to join me to this, or, to partner with this other organization. No, that's a very skewed mentality. Be wise in how you share your resources, your ideas, your energy, but also don't be selfish. There's a lot out there. There's a lot of problem to solve. And I believe in karma. And how the much good that you put in is what you will get back, if not more. So think about the kind of contribution that you're making, not only for the problem, but also for your immediate community, for your loved ones. And I think the ultimate goal of being a change maker is changing yourself for the better.
That's to live by.
Beautiful. Okay. We need to put you on the world stage and open the radio.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Leah. Thank you, Lungi and Ruth, for joining us. I think I'm not going to preempt the rest of the events we have for the year, but this is probably up there in my top 2. Yeah, thank you so much, Leah.
Thank you so much for having me, and let us do something together. Let's do a workshop together. And
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank
yeah.
you. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.